Hey everyone, how's it going? For today's video, I'm proud to present an up-close and personal, in-depth look into the 2015 Buick Regal GS all-wheel drive. This is going to be a detailed, in-depth review of the GS. We'll start it up, show the engine, get an exhaust clip, and go over the performance data, take it on a thorough road test, and show you many of the unique aspects of both the interior as well as exterior. And so, without further ado, let's go ahead and start her up, let her run. As you can see, the GS does come standard with a remote start. Also standard is a remote access smart key system, so all you have to do is just keep the key fob in your pocket and you're able to lock and unlock the vehicle via the chrome buttons on all four door handles. To lock, just tap the button once. Then after waiting a second, go ahead and tap it again. Once to unlock the driver's door, once more to unlock the rest of the doors. This exterior color is known as copper red metallic and is paired with a premium black leather interior specifically trimmed for the GS. In order to start, all you have to do is just make sure you have the key fob within the interior, put your foot on the brake, and hit the dash mounted button to go. The Regal features variable effort electro-hydraulic rack and pinion power steering routed through a GS-specific 3-spoke flat-bottom multifunction steering wheel. I love the look and feel. It's very aggressively styled and not something you would expect to see in a Buick, but just seems so appropriate in this car. The wheel itself is very thick and substantial. You have big grip bolsters up top, satin silver across the spokes, subtle chrome trim across the airbag and controls, not to mention cross-stitching. As far as transmissions, the GS is available with two different options depending on whether you go for the front-wheel drive version or the all-wheel drive version like we have here. If you go for the all-wheel drive, you're limited to the 6-speed automatic transmission. Despite having manual shiftability via the console selector, a set of paddle shifters would really enhance the car's sportiness. Especially this day and age, this particular class, if it's going to have an automatic, a lot of times you're going to have some sort of paddle shift technology. I love the shifter housing though with the chrome bezel. It's very, very pretty in the sunlight. If you go for a front-wheel drive GS, you can also opt for a 6-speed manual transmission, which sounds pretty cool, but with the all-wheel drive system you get an electronic limited slip differential. You can't get that with the front-wheel drive version, so it's a little bit of a trade-off, but one that's probably not that big of a deal if you're not going to track your car. I hope to actually be able to test the manual one day. I haven't had the pleasure of doing so yet, but you never know, anything's a possibility. Above the infotainment system, the GS also has Buick's interactive drive control system, but instead of the standard car's touring mode, in addition to sport, you also have a unique GS mode. Activating GS mode causes a bright ring of light to illuminate the instrument cluster, which is pretty cool. Systems affected relative to the mode include the steering firmness, adaptive dampers, throttle sensitivity, and stability control. If equipped, the automatic transmission shift mapping is altered and you get throttle blips upon downshifts. The all-wheel drive system is also said to be affected if equipped. Going through the stability control system, you can activate a competition mode which relaxes it even further to allow you more freedom on the track, so it'll only intervene at the limits. One neat bit of tech introduced for the 2014 model year and standard on the GS is an 8-inch reconfigurable TFT display in the center of the instrument cluster. Off to the left-hand side you have an analog tachometer, and the right-hand side you have vehicle fuel and temperature. In the middle though you have a digitalized analog speedometer with a digital speed readout, oil temperature, and voltometer. You can do Sport, which we're currently on, or Touring, which is the standard setting. You can also link it to the various drive modes, so if you have it linked and you put it into Sport or GS mode, it'll automatically bring it to the Sport screen. The way it all looks and feels kind of reminds me of the full-length digital instrument displays in the newest Cadillac products, so obviously this one combines some analog gauges, but off to the right-hand side you have an arrow pad that goes between your multimedia, driver information, GS performance pages, and more. So if we click the button to the left, you have Info, Performance, Audio, Phone, Navigation, and Settings. If we go up to Info, you have a digital speed readout, trip computers, fuel data, oil life, tire pressure monitoring system, some extra data, setting a speed limit, an eco index, and a blank page. Back to the left, go down to Performance, and you have things like a lateral G-force meter, lap timer, oil temperature, oil pressure, battery voltage, and transmission fluid temperature. There's some extra auxiliary gauges. Of course, audio, showing you what's currently playing, as well as the media device, hands-free Bluetooth telephone, and navigation, which is pretty cool because it actually shows a little mini map in the middle of the speedometer. You can also interact by clicking the arrow button to the right. And in the very bottom you have Settings, where you can personalize things like your units, display theme like I showed you earlier, customize which information displays on respective pages, set a speed warning, and that's pretty much it. And so, we'll go and flip on the automatic LED accented bifunction HID headlamps and the hazards. All 4 windows are automatic down, but the front 2 windows are automatic up as well. So let's go ahead and check out the exterior. Upon closing the door, the vehicle will chime a few times to let you know it's lost detection of the proximity key fob. The 5th generation Buick Regal was introduced to the North American market back in 2011. It brought a fresh, youthful design with upscale appointments and dynamic driving characteristics, all wrapped into an all-new mid-size sports sedan that was even available with a manual transmission. Remember, this is Buick we're talking about, responsible for other large luxury sedans like the Lucerne, Park Avenue, LeSabre, and even the Roadmaster. At the time, aside from an all-new LaCrosse debuting the year prior, Buick didn't have much in terms of excitement, making the Regal's rebirth that much more intriguing. Regal's Euro-inspired design and handling should come as no surprise, as many Europeans will quickly point out that the Regal was heavily influenced by the Opel Insignia, as the cars are largely the same. Subtle differences include structural reinforcements to comply with strict US safety regulations, unique headlamps, tail lamps, front grille, badging, and side view mirrors. Paying homage to Buicks of the past, the Regal has 4 vent ports in the hood, 2 on either side, which basically signifies how many cylinders the vehicle has. And while unfortunately they're not functional, it's a pretty cool historical touch. Buick Grand Sports have always been synonymous with larger engines, better handling suspensions, and more, so when the Regal GS debuted for 2012, Buick finally had a true sports car worthy of competing with the segment's best. No, it's not a Grand National or a GNX, but it's a pretty awesome offering in today's modern Buick lineup. It differed quite a bit from your normal Regal in many ways, not just performance, including a 0.4-inch drop in ride height with standard 19-inch and available 20-inch wheels like you see here. The unique front fascia incorporates large vertical air inlets highlighted by satin metallic finishes, not to mention subtle bumper winglets towards the outer edges. The rear fascia is also unique, incorporating a small diffuser and a pair of satin metallic trapezoidal exhaust outlets. Other changes include rocker panel extensions and a rear spoiler. For 2014, the Regal lineup received a facelift with updated styling inside and out, powertrain upgrades, and the addition of an available all-wheel drive system. Originally, when the Regal GS was in its concept stages, it was designed with all-wheel drive, but the production version was offered in front-wheel drive, so 2012 and 2013 models can only be had in front-wheel drive. Now, Regal's equipped with the 2-liter turbo engine and automatic transmission, including the GS. Both 2014 and 2015 models are available with a fully automatic and on-demand Haldex all-wheel drive system, paired with an electronic limited-slip rear differential. Together, the system can send up to 90% of the available torque to the rear wheels, where the ELSD can then adjust the torque split between the rear wheels. As with other similar systems, the Regal will primarily act in front-wheel drive unless the situation necessitates the torque transfer. The downside to the extra grip and enhanced all-weather capability is the system does add a bit of weight, 271 pounds to be exact, so honestly it depends on what you're looking for. I imagine enthusiasts will likely favor the front-wheel drive version not only because you still get the GS-specific front suspension, but the available manual transmission as well. The Regal GS comes standard with 19-inch 5 twin-spoke alloy wheels and 245/40 Goodyear Eagle tires. However, on our tester is an optional set of 20-inch polished alloys wrapped in grippy 255/35 Pirelli P0 summer-rated rubber, able to hold around 0.9 G of lateral acceleration. The 20s are perhaps my favorite option available for the Regal. They're large without being obtrusive and give the car a great performance stance to go along with that lower ride height. Best part is that the wheel and Pirelli combo can be had for just $700, $300 less than it would cost to add the power moonroof. For me, it's a no-brainer. As far as the brakes, the GS gets a unique Brembo setup up front composed of 13.6-inch internally ventilated discs and 4-piston aluminum calipers. The Brembos are the largest set of brakes available for the Regal and really have some bite. The ventilated rear discs are shared with the standard Regal Turbo, measuring 12.4 inches and paired with single-piston aluminum calipers. With this setup, the GS is able to stop from 60 miles an hour in approximately 105 feet. Giving the GS a bit of added control over your typical Regal, though, is GM's Hyper or high-performance strut front suspension, a modified McPherson design which is said to mitigate torque steer and deliver greater confidence in the corners through maintaining negative camber. Out back, all Regals feature a multi-link suspension unless you opt for all-wheel drive, in which case you get independent control arms. As we discussed earlier, the GS has that unique interactive drive control system to firm or relax the suspension on demand with the adaptive dampers. Thanks to the newly available Haldex all-wheel drive system and optional Pirellis, the car has a ton of grip, more than I first expected it to have, honestly. Accelerating full throttle from a standstill is accompanied by no wheel slip whatsoever. Power is distributed to all 4 wheels as needed for smooth, drama-free takeoff as boost develops. There's very little lag, so the power comes on quick, but never did the front wheels become unsettled. At least in my experience, the car was always straight as an arrow during hard launches. It's agile and very responsive to steering inputs. I also found it to be a pretty nimble car, as it's easy to toss around without excessive body roll, characteristics you'd expect out of a sports car, not a Buick. That's the magic of the GS. It's an all-out sports sedan that has a level of dynamic driving that I firmly believe can go toe-in-toe with the German competition. It really doesn't feel as heavy of a car as the numbers suggest. Overall length is 190.2 inches with a width of 73.1 inches and a height of 58.4 inches, riding on a 107.8-inch wheelbase. Total curb weight for the all-wheel drive tester we have here is around 3,981 pounds. The Regal lineup for the most part is powered by an all-aluminum 2-liter 4-cylinder, benefiting from up to 24 psi boost thanks to a twin-scroll turbocharger and an air-to-air intercooler. The base 2.4-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder is no longer available unless you opt for the Regal with e-assist. The direct-injected 2-liter was redesigned for the 2014 model year to include a forged steel crankshaft, twin balance shafts, sound dampening, and other low-friction measures to improve overall fuel economy, power, and engine refinement. All seemingly great things, as the engine feels quite responsive and relatively thrifty at the pump depending on driving habits. The previously offered Regal CXL was also available with the turbo motor, but the GS had its own unique tuning that gave it quite an advantage in both power and torque. With the 2014 refresh, however, the playing field is evened out, as the Regal and Regal GS are now powered by the same motor with similar tuning. This means the standard Regal Turbo sees increases of 39 horsepower and 35 pound-feet of torque over its predecessor, while the GS is actually down by 11 horsepower compared to 2012 and 2013. This doesn't seem to have affected performance though, to be quite honest. Peak torque for the GS, which hasn't changed from before, has achieved 500 fewer RPMs than the Regal Turbo for a bit extra grunt off the line. The engine develops 259 horsepower at 5,300 RPM and 295 pound-feet of torque at 2,500 RPM, good for a 0 to 60 time of just over 6 seconds and a quarter mile of just under 15 seconds. Top speed is limited to 150 miles an hour. You certainly don't forget that as a Buick because it's a very quiet car. Under normal driving you can even barely hear the engine. For something of this caliber and class, I'd like to hear a little bit of extra either engine or exhaust sound from a cool induction system or a sport exhaust, but all in all it feels and sounds very refined. The engine's valve train consists of double overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, and continuous variable valve timing. Compression ratio is rated at 9.5 to 1 with a red line of 7,000 RPM. As far as fuel economy, the GS, which runs on premium fuel and carries an 18-gallon tank, receives improved ratings up to 21 miles to a gallon in the city and 31 on the highway, depending on how equipped. Our GS all-wheel drive tester is rated between 19 miles to a gallon in the city and 27 on the highway. As we discussed earlier, the Buick Regal is essentially the European Opel Insignia, rebranded for the American market. Inside you can really tell that. It has a very German, European vibe to it. Overall, the interior solidity is really good. Like we talked about earlier, it's a very quiet environment. But for the most part, I don't believe the quality of materials are quite as high grade as competitors from BMW and Audi, especially considering the price point. That's not to say the build quality isn't good. I mean, you have padded material across the doors, dash, center console, satin, high gloss bright work, all splashed throughout in color accent stitching. It's a nicely appointed and very stylish interior, especially how the dash trim blends into the door panels. I really like that key detail. In addition to the aluminum sport pedals, unique steering wheel, and instrument cluster, the GS also receives specific front bucket seats that are far more aggressive than your standard Regal. You have bigger bolsters up top and down below, a unique rib portion in the middle with color accent stitching, and adjustable headrests and seat belts, not to mention full power adjustment, 2-person memory, and adjustable lumbar. They're quite comfortable, the bolsters really hug you in tight, and it's easy to find a comfortable seating position. One thing's for sure though, they will keep you planted around the corners. With the 2014 refresh, the interior also got a few key updates with the instrument cluster like we talked about earlier and the center stack, which is a lot cleaner than before. The new 8-inch MyLink system actually has 7 radio controls versus the previous 17, so it's a lot more ergonomic. You also don't have the rotary wheel in the middle either, all limited to the touchscreen, so it's just simpler overall. You have a manual tilting, telescoping steering wheel, the dash is wrapped out of soft touch material, and new for 2015 is OnStar with 4G LTE and standard built-in Wi-Fi.
So let's go ahead and see if she sounds. So let's go ahead and shut her up.
The Regal GS features a standard premium Bose 9-speaker surround sound system rather than Buick's IntelliLink infotainment system. It's actually the identical system to the Chevrolet MyLink and GMC's IntelliLink system, but it's been fancified a little bit for Buick's application. Some of the icons have changed, but the overall features and functionality are pretty much identical between all three systems. I have gone a little further in depth into this system in previous videos, so if you want to check out some of the features and functionality, check out the link in the description box below or click the card annotation at the top right hand corner of the video. So this infotainment system was actually part of the 2014 refresh, as with the rest of the center console, to give a little bit more technology and modernism to it. You have your basic system controls down below there: rewind, fast forward, change your track, like seek, tune, things like that. You have a rotary dial here that you can use to go between the different menus if you didn't want to use the touch functionality, or your main menu there. Home button brings you back to this screen. Radio, media, back button, and eject for the in-dash CD player. There's a strip of piano black trim surrounding the infotainment system and center air vents that complements the trim around the speedometer cluster. At the top, in addition to your sport and GS modes, hazards, you have your traction control, lane departure warning, and parking sensor activation. At the very bottom, you have a standard dual-zone electronic automatic climate control system that incorporates touch sensors to either side for the temperature, as well as the heated seats. Front and rear defrost, recycling, different zones, and fan speed with one-touch automatic to the right. In the bottom, there's a small storage cubby with a 12-volt power outlet. And continuing on back, another storage tray, an electronic parking brake, and two cup holders. Underneath the console, kind of an interesting shape. I wish the armrest actually extended out a little bit more for the passenger side, but there's good length for the driver. Lift it up, it's also damped, so it won't slam back down, and you can lock it in place. You have all of your media inputs here, two USB ports, an SD card slot, an aux jack, and a 12-volt power outlet, and a little storage well. Padded A-pillars, grip handles up top with side curtain airbags, and padded visors with illuminated vanity mirrors. The rear view mirror is auto-dimming and has your OnStar controls beneath. Up in the top stack, you have your LED interior illumination and reading lamps, 3-position garage home link, and your sunroof controls. All fully automatic. As far as the steering wheel, on the right-hand side you have your radio controls, including volume, rewind, fast forward, track selection, or going through your different radio preset stations. In addition to the little arrow pad here that corresponds to the driver information system, like I showed you with the reconfigurable speedometer cluster. Off to the left-hand side, you have your cruise control, and this one has all of the optional driver convenience features, so you have like forward collision preparation, adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, all of that kind of stuff. And you can set the distance to the cruise control via that button right there for like near, medium, and far, like adjusting the gap that the vehicle will follow the one in front. Heated steering wheel, down below there, telephone controls, and voice commands.
Command, please.
Help.
You can say phone, audio, navigation, weather, or OnStar. To call a number quicker, say call followed by the number, like this.
Intermittent wipers to the right, and your turn signals and high beams to the left. Alrighty. Go ahead and shut her down. And we'll go ahead and check out the back seat. The Regal doesn't have a huge back seat, so if you're around 6 feet and over, it's going to start to feel a little cramped back here. I mean, I'm 5'10", and with a comfortable seating position for myself up front, I probably have about 1.5 inches of leg space, about 1/2 inch of head space, and depending on where I put my head, my hair just barely starts to graze the headliner. It's not necessarily something I would like to take a long trip for like a few hours or something sitting back here, but it's definitely doable. It's also reasonably comfortable. For me, it would be a little bit more comfortable long term if it had a bit more lower back support, a little bit of built-in lumbar, but the overall environment is still quite nice. I mean, just like the front, you have the padded material across the doors, the chrome and the satin bright work. There's 2 air vents down below to keep everything nice and ventilated, a small storage tray, and a 120-volt AC household outlet with a grounded plug, so you can carry a laptop or something like that with you. There is a padded armrest here with 2 cup holders and a small storage tray. There's no trunk pass-through, unfortunately, though. That would be a little bit more convenient for longer items, and it's a pretty big opening too, so if it had that, it would be pretty accommodating. You can sit 3 people back here. The middle person might not be the most comfortable. There's no third headrest in the middle right here, and there's a little bit of a drivetrain hump, so you'd have to straddle it to either side. Maybe someone smaller, that child or something like that, would be a little bit more comfortable in the middle row seat. There are child seat anchors in the back, side curtain airbags all the way around, reading lamps up top, 2 grip handles, and coat hooks. So overall, pretty nice environment. More comfortable for shorter people, but definitely doable. So let's go and check out the rest of the vehicle. Out back, Regals equipped with the 2-liter turbo engine have 14.2 cubic feet of cargo space. If you get the Regal with e-assist, it drops a few cubic feet or so with the battery packs. Off to the left-hand side, you have a little storage net, and for extra practicality, you can fold down the 60-40 split rear seat to get storage space all the way to the front. Underneath the trunk floor, you don't have a spare tire, but a tire inflation kit.
The passenger seat features the same power adjustments that you find in the driver's seat, including the 2-way lumbar. Surprisingly, the glove box is not locking, and like I talked about earlier, I wish there was some more padded material across the bottom here for the car's price point. But inside, there's a lot of space. The glove box is actually damped, so it opens up nice and slowly, lined in velour, with a little bit of chain storage.
The new age Regal isn't your typical Buick, blending sporty European design and efficient performance without compromising on luxury. It offers a lot to those looking for something that strays from the norm and delivers plenty of driving enjoyment.
Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed the in-depth look at the 2015 Buick Regal GS. Be sure to stay tuned next time. There's a lot more where that came from. Take care everybody.